It's been almost 10 years since Fujifilm first introduced the X100 series, and over the years people came to really appreciate the user experience and the quality and the results you can get from these types of cameras. Almost 10 years later, we arrive at this, the Fujifilm X100V. Hi, my name is Jorge, welcome. In this channel we merge creativity and productivity to try to live a more fulfilling life. In a previous video we talked about the Fujifilm X-T3 and how I think is the best bang for the buck of 2020. That opinion has not changed, I still stand by it, especially because at the time of recording this video the summer sale is still going. However, I personally prefer the X100 series. I use the X100F every single day for over a year while traveling and working as a professional photographer in Japan. So, it was very easy for me to get used to this camera and quickly notice what's different. Let's talk about it. Now, this camera was designed for a specific group of people, a particular demographic, and if you jump in blind expecting this to be a jack of all trades and to do everything well including photo and video, you will be disappointed. As long as you understand the limitations, then you can assess the camera properly. Fujifilm officially presents the X100V as a premium compact digital camera, not a perfect hybrid for everything, but a small, lightweight, portable and compact camera created for traveling, street photography, and meant as an everyday carry. Fujifilm cameras are well known for their retro look, tactile knobs and dials, their film simulations and color science, and I can tell you that the attention to detail is definitely there. I was lucky enough to attend a Fujifilm presentation open for the general public while I was living in Osaka for both the X100V and the X Pro 3 to get hands-on with the camera and get a feel for it. And that is something that I 100% recommend to everybody considering getting a Fujifilm camera. Go to your local camera store, go to a rental store, get a feel for the camera, the build quality, the knobs, the tactile feel, the weight. It all adds up to create a different experience. And that is the key word here, different. This is definitely different from your traditional mirrorless or DSLR camera. This camera offers you quick access to the most important settings: your aperture ring, shutter speed dial, ISO dial, and shutter compensation dial. However, these settings are not set in stone. You can custom map almost every button on this camera and make it your own. I personally prefer the rangefinder style viewfinder, mainly just because I hate pressing my nose to the screen of the camera and getting it all oily and dirty. If you have watched my X-T3 review, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You already heard my little rant about the viewfinder placement, so I'm not gonna say it again. But with this camera you have an optical and electronic viewfinder. You have both options available. They're not forcing you to use one over the other, it's up to you which one you want to use. Different can be a positive or a negative, but you won't know the outcome until you hold the camera, so please do that if you're considering buying this camera and do not judge it on the specs on a piece of paper or a screen somewhere. I've mentioned in several of my previous videos the difference between the initial purchase and the upgrade, but let's summarize it. The initial purchase is a lot more important as it holds a lot more weight and meaning in your life, and the upgrade not so much. Therefore, when considering upgrading, in this case a camera, the upgrades have to be significant enough to be able to justify it. So, if we really think about it, when considering the upgrades to a lens that cannot be removed from the body and the weather-resistant improvements to a body that cannot be sold or upgraded on its own, then that's when you realize that some of the upgrades and the changes on this camera are significant. Let's go in depth and talk about some of these changes. Fujifilm redesigned the lens, increasing the sharpness, lowering the halation and distortion, and making it more useful for portraits or close-ups. Although I personally did not have any issues when shooting portraits with the X100F, I know the problem existed. It was real, and it was most apparent at shooting at the minimum focus distance. Pretty much every video and review on YouTube about the X100T and the X100F tells you to shoot at f4 or f5.6. But I want that to be an option and my choice, and not mandatory because the lens is too soft wide open. And this is a significant upgrade. Not only because it is a fixed lens you cannot remove, so you cannot buy a sharper lens later, but also because it enables you to get portraits and close-ups and even macro shots that were not possible before. at least not properly. This is a 23mm f2 lens, a 35mm equivalent in full frame, and this focal length is a personal preference. It really is up to the user. Don't follow a blank or general statement saying 28mm is the best or 35mm is the best. Don't be that person. Get your hands on the camera, test it, try it. If it works for you, then you can form your own opinion. If not, you can also form your own opinion. It's fine. I personally do prefer the 35mm equivalent. However, you can get it a little wider and a little tighter with the help of adapters. These two options help you adapt different focal lengths and changing the field of view. And if you already own those two adapters from previous Fuji generations, you will be able to adapt it on the X100V, no problem whatsoever. Now, the redesign of the lens also allows the body to be somewhat protected from the elements. This right here is the first X100 series to be weather resistant. However, it does require an extra step of an adapter and a filter to make it so. On one hand, I understand why a lot of people don't like the fact that you have to buy an accessory to make the camera weather resistant. On the other hand, I really like that you have the option. And to me, that's a lot more valuable than not having the option at all. Several times I found a great location, but I was not able to take the photo because of the lack of weather resistance in the X100F. For example, typhoon season in Japan. It presented an opportunity to capture images that I normally don't get the chance to get. So unfortunately I missed out on the opportunity of getting that photo in that specific moment. So yes, weather resistance is a significant upgrade in the X100V. And personally, it does not bother me that I have to put a filter and an adapter on the camera to make it weather resistant. Most street photographers take pride in customizing and accessorizing their cameras. So putting an adapter on the camera with the filter and a lens hood is something that I would do regardless. In fact, I don't know anybody that uses the X100 camera just like this. You put it on your pocket, you put it on your camera bag, you risk losing it. What happens to the lens? Does it get scratched? Is it protected? There's nothing wrong with using the camera like that. I just personally have never met anybody that uses it like that. Accessories are a big thing for the X100 series, and we'll make a dedicated accessory video later on. Alright, let's talk about video. As you can see, I switched my Sony ZV-1 for the X100V. And as you can tell, the quality is actually not too bad. Right now I'm recording at 4K 24p at 200 megabits per second with the Eterna film simulation, and the quality is actually pretty decent. However, I cannot see myself. I have no idea if the frame is okay, if I'm in focus. We'll have to review that later. And there's some serious downsides with the connections and the ND filter and the ports. We'll talk about that later. Surprisingly, you do get 422 10-bit out via a recorder like a Ninja 5 for example, but internally you only have 10 minutes of recording time, so plan accordingly for that. I have mentioned this before, but I prefer to live inside the viewfinder while taking photos. That's the main reason why I use a rangefinder style camera to begin with. However, having a tilting touch LCD screen is a great feature, even if I don't use it that often. Having a selfish mindset of I don't use this feature so it shouldn't be on the camera is just ridiculous. The screen gives you an extra degree of flexibility that goes in line with the point of this camera, making street photography or event photography even more accessible than ever. Generally, nobody likes when the changes are for the worse. So the fact that the LCD screen is 100% flush with the body and is not intrusive is what really sells it for me. And maybe I'm picky, but screens like the GFX 50R and the Panasonic S1H really annoy me. So I'm glad Fuji built an LCD screen like this. And if the viewfinder is not for you, then maybe the tilting touch LCD screen works better for your style. They added touch gestures to replace the D-pad, and I personally dislike this. I buy this camera for the controls, the knobs, the dials, not for navigating menus or touchscreen functions. I rather control my focus point with the control stick, but that's just my preference. At least now you have multiple options and multiple ways to control your focus points, which is great. This is one of the key selling points for the Fujifilm cameras, and it seems like some simulations are locked to the generation of cameras as well. So, since this is the same sensor as the X-T3, they added the Eterna film simulation, as well as the brand new Classic Negative. I actually like Classic Negative. It's very film-like look. I like the tone and the color reproduction. However, I don't see it dethroning the Classic Chrome as my main film simulation. Alright, so for me, those were the big improvements, the significant ones. But there's a lot of upgrades and changes for the quality of life improvements of the camera. Let's take a look at those. The shutter speed dial is a lot more stiff, and I actually like that. I appreciate it. Especially if this is your everyday carry and you have it dangling with a camera strap on your chest or your side, the settings can sometimes get moved around and shift around. So every time I turn the camera on to take a photo, I have to recheck the settings and make sure everything's correct. However, the exposure compensation dial is the same as the X100F. I wish it were the same as the new shutter speed dial. The ISO dial has been redesigned and is now actually usable. You pull once, choose your ISO, and push to lock. This is awesome. The ISO dial on the X100F is extremely frustrating. You have to try yourself to understand my pain. I don't love the fact that they removed the D-pad, but it allows more room for my hand to properly grip the camera, so that's not too bad. The grip is ever so slightly thicker, easier to hold, but not by much. Focusing speed and accuracy has been improved, and the camera just feels a lot snappier and faster than the X100F, and that's always a plus. The viewfinder material is different. It's not rubber, it's like a hard plastic. And now it does not catch every single particle in the known universe, which is nice. Both the LCD resolution and electronic viewfinder resolution have been improved, but sadly I cannot tell the difference. Having a built-in ND filter on the camera is amazing and I love it, and now it has been improved from 3 stops to 4 stops, which makes it amazing for street photography, shooting wide open and bright sunny days. Alright, so that's some of the important things that I wanted to mention, but now there's things that I don't like about the camera. Let's talk about those. So number 1, the battery. It is still the same from the X100F and the X-T3. This is a positive if you have some of the old batteries and you're upgrading from one of those cameras, but it's a negative if you don't have any of the old batteries. They're not cheap and they don't last long, so you have to buy multiple. I wish it had the battery from the X-T4. Number 2, it has a single SD card slot. I'd wish it had 2. That's one of the things that I really liked about the X-T3, and I mentioned it in the review as well. 1 card for RAW, 1 card for JPEG, and you can separate and organize your files accordingly. So yeah, I wish the X100V had 2 cards. Number 3, the ports for video are disappointing. 2.5mm headphone jack, so you need an adapter, and the obsolete and useless micro HDMI connector. Like I just showed you, the video quality on this camera is actually pretty good, but these 2 downsides make it really difficult to consider the camera for video work. And next on the list is also linked to video. So the awesome and improved ND filter that we already talked about is completely disabled in video and there's no way you can enable it. Defeats the purpose of having a built-in ND filter, and you still have to buy one if you want to shoot video, so it makes no sense. So this camera is not for everybody. It could be that 35mm is not your focal length, or it could be that you want a hybrid for both video and photo work. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, the camera is designed for a particular use, a particular target, and that target and that use, it excels at it. It's really good. It has the same sensor and quality from the flagship Fujifilm cameras, built exceptionally well, and really fun to use too. Is this a good camera? Absolutely. Is it the right camera for you? I have no idea. Go out and rent it, borrow it, get your hands on it, shoot it, see if you like it, see if it fits your shooting style, and then you can make your own informed decision. At the end of the day, this is a great camera and fits my shooting style, my traveling habits, and all the things that I want to do. So for me, this is the best camera, not the XT series, not the X Pro series, but this right here, the X100V. But I'm curious to know, what do you think of this camera? Have you had a Fuji camera before? Do you prefer the X100 series over the XT series or X Pro series? What do you think? Leave a comment down below. And that's it for today, guys. If you found this video helpful or valuable, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, for giving me your time and your energy, and good luck with your creative process.